Child, what is it? We are your friends.
I'm Grayson Ottaway. This is another marvelous video. Rogue is one of the most popular characters in the X-Men universe, and her unique powers often make her stand out amongst the other mutants, ranging from her ability to absorb the powers of the other mutants to impressive physical attributes. Rogue has always managed to surprise the audience as a hero as well as a villain. She's even defeated various other X-Men and some very powerful villains. Today, we will explore her physiological details and tell you everything that there is to know about Rogue. But before that, very small request. If you like our content, please leave a comment below and support us by subscribing to this channel. Small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you.
But now I'm the strongest, and I will destroy you and your pathetic X-Men!
How does Rogue's main powers work? Rogue's primary powers lie in her ability to absorb the life energy of any other mutants or beings who get too close to her, which essentially allows her to access their powers and psyche. Even though this sounds like an extremely cool ability to have, Rogue often believed it to be a curse since she didn't have control over them and couldn't turn those powers off. Every time someone gets too close to her, she temporarily gains their powers and unique skills, and sometimes the powers of various mutants merge within her body to create a new combination of powers. This was also seen in the X-Men Legacy comics, wherein Rogue had combined Wolverine's claws, Psylocke's psychic abilities, and Colossus's strength. She then became an undefeatable force who could even smell or hear her opponents from far away and even defeat them with the help of the combination of her new powers. While there is no limit to how many people's powers she can collect at once, we've witnessed her possess 5 powers at once during the events of X-Men Second Incoming.
Chef?
You know what happens when I touch somebody. You want to end up in the hospital?
Maybe it's worth it, no?
During an event that took place in the Marvel Superheroes comics, Rogue ended up in a face-off with Carol Danvers and absorbed a considerable amount of her powers and psyche. These powers stayed with her for quite a long time and even left behind a part of Carol's psyche within Rogue. She even gained a 7th sense due to this encounter, and this newly gained ability allowed her to predict her opponent's moves. Besides this, she gained immense strength, durability, and stamina, which all contributed to making her one of the strongest female characters in the X-Men. Her powers gave her an edge against any opponent, as she could drain them of their powers irrespective of what those powers were. However, Rogue even copied their psyches and powers, which often overwhelmed her. After observing the psyches of various mutants, Rogue was found to be in a fragile mental state wherein the echoes of so many psyches really messed with her concentration. Rogue received some help from psychics, such as Charles Xavier or Jean Grey, who helped her suppress the voices in her head. She also takes up the physical attributes of her victims. Besides absorbing her opponent's powers, Rogue even has the ability to take on their physical attributes, depending upon who exactly the opponent is. For instance, she turned green and even gained quite a muscular form when she faced the Hulk and absorbed his powers. While this is not exactly shape-shifting, Rogue could temporarily share physical features with her victims whilst draining their powers. These physical attributes varied in terms of her opponent's best qualities, and she usually only gained their most unique features. If Rogue were to absorb the powers of a human or a mutant with regular human features, there would be no significant change in her appearance. However, when she absorbed the powers of Wolverine, Psylocke, and other mutants at once, she gained Wolverine's claws and Archangel's wings, which again goes to show that she only takes up the best part of her victim's physical attributes.
X-Men!
Let's see if I can improve your disposition.
Are the powers absorbed permanently retained? While Rogue can absorb her opponent's powers instantly, there are many questions surrounding whether these powers are permanently retained or are lost after a point in time. Rogue does not duplicate her opponent's powers, but rather drains them and uses them for her gain. In her current form, Rogue has yet to display the ability to keep these powers forever, or even copy them and use them at will in the future. However, she has some control over how long she can retain her opponent's powers, which usually depends on the time she maintains contact with her opponents. In one unique scenario, Rogue had fought Ms. Marvel for quite some time, retaining her powers for a lifetime. However, it was later established that this was not due to Rogue's abilities, but rather due to Miss Marvel's Kree origins that had allowed Rogue to keep the powers when she absorbed them. During the Extreme X-Men storyline, Sage briefly gave Rogue the ability to access all sorts of powers that she had absorbed throughout her lifetime. It was even revealed that Rogue stored some aspects of her opponent's psyche in her mind, allowing her to mutate their powers and gain access to them whenever she needed. However, this process greatly burdened her, and she could only apply this trick after Sage helped her with her powers and allowed her to draw upon any past opponent's abilities. It was then established that she has some traces of all the powers and all the abilities she's absorbed so far, but the modern-day Rogue does not draw upon these past powers and can only use them temporarily.
Hey, cold hands?
Longer the contact, weaker the opponent. While Rogue absorbs others' powers depending on how close they are, her mutant abilities also depend on how long she remains in contact with her opponent, along with the proximity. After Rogue establishes a connection between herself and her victim, she starts draining their powers and memories for as long as they remain in contact with her, depending on how long she maintains a connection. Her victims lose more of their powers and memories as they start to weaken. Usually, Rogue can absorb her victim's memories and powers for as long as 60 times the time she was in contact with them. For instance, if she remains in contact with a mutant for a minute, she has an hour of their powers to use. When Rogue spends too much time in touch with her victims, it can have dire consequences for them and even impacts them and her in the long run. In one such instance, her face-off with Carol Danvers had sent Carol into a coma, and her powers had taken up to several years to return to their usual level.
No, I've learned that honesty is very important between people you care about.
Rogue's mother used her powers to her advantage. Rogue was raised by her adopted mother, Mystique, and the two did not exactly share the best relationship. While Mystique did care for Rogue and help her with training and powers, she was also quite focused on defeating her opponents by any means necessary. In the X-Men Endangered Species story arc, Mystique shoots at Rogue and kidnaps her to use her to defeat Mr. Sinister. After Rogue falls unconscious, Mystique tries to push Mr. Sinister toward her in the hope that Rogue will drain his powers and destroy him. While Mystique's plan works well and she manages to defeat Mr. Sinister, Rogue is quite young at the time of this incident and unaware that Mystique has used her powers as a weapon.
Friendly advice, teach? Don't mess with the rogue!
Rogue can also absorb memories. Besides having the ability to absorb other powers and psyche, Rogue even has the ability to absorb their memories and learn more about them. When Rogue was first introduced in Marvel Comics in the early 1980s, she only possessed the ability to affect others with her touch. Over time, her powers have been depicted on a larger scale, and she can touch anyone and absorb their strengths and their memories. She only needed to maintain some skin-to-skin contact with her opponents or victims in order for her powers to work, and this power was unique from the usual mutant abilities. How does blind spot cancel out her powers? While Rogue had the ability to absorb someone's memories, her friend Blind Spot had the exact opposite ability to be able to erase anyone's memories by just touching them. After leaving her home, Rogue found a new family among the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and made new friends in the form of Mystique, Destiny, and Blind Spot. Usually, Rogue suffered due to her ability to absorb others' powers and memories by just being close to them. She was soon delighted to learn that Blind Spot could erase anyone's memories by touching them. Rogue's powers were cancelled out by Blind Spot, and the two soon formed a close friendship. However, Mystique soon asked Blind Spot to leave the group, and Rogue was once again left without a friend. Blind Spot even erased all their memories before leaving, so Rogue could not go after her later or seek her help if ever she needed a friend again.
I could spit on him if I wasn't a lady. Looks like he's running for Congress.
She is not restricted to absorbing powers from mutants only. Even though Rogue mostly fights against mutants, her abilities are not restricted to them, and she can extend her abilities to even absorb energy from any living being. While she can't absorb powers from humans, she can most certainly absorb their energy, psyche, and memories. Moreover, she can absorb the powers of other superheroes who are not mutants, such as Carol Danvers. After Rogue absorbed her powers of flight and strength, Carol was even left in a coma to recover from the loss of her powers. Rogue had once even absorbed the powers of various superheroes such as Thor, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, War Machine, and even the Hulk and She-Hulk's strength and green skin. She even gained the Human Torch's powers, including the ability to set herself on fire and blast flames at others. On one occasion, she absorbed the powers of the other demon named Mephisto, and her powers were most definitely not restricted to just mutants. She could absorb the superpowers of any entity that was more intelligent than a lower mammal, including humans, aliens, and even gods and demons. She once had a fatal touch. Over the course of years, Rogue has accomplished various feats and even went through some situations that helped her gain new powers. In one such instance, Rogue gained the ability to kill just about anyone by simply touching them. After encountering the villain named Pandemic, Rogue was infected with the Strain 88 virus created by him and even gained the ability to kill anyone with just a touch. The virus even endangered her body, and Rogue was then hospitalized to recover from the attack. After making a recovery, Rogue discovered that she still had her fatal touch, and she even used this power to assist Cable in defeating Hecatomb.
I wanted to deny myself, too, for a time. That could have been me helping that madman.
How do some characters resist her powers? In most cases, Rogue could successfully absorb her victim's powers through touch, but sometimes she could not weaken her victim in this manner. If she tried to use her powers on a mutant or a villain that was much stronger than her, then absorbing the powers only caused her damage, and she ended up hurting herself. On various occasions, Rogue would get overwhelmed by her opponent's powers and have to step back on her own. At one point, she was dating Magneto, whose powers greatly exceeded her own. When she tried to kiss Magneto in an attempt to steal his powers, she gets overwhelmed and fails to absorb his powers. This also happened when she tried to kiss Loki to absorb his powers, but she was no match for the infamous god of mischief who easily resisted her powers. In an unusual scenario, Wolverine once offered his powers to Rogue after she took a hit to save Wolverine's fiancé. Wolverine was greatly touched by her gesture, even though it had left her in a critical condition, and he then willingly stepped up to share his power to save her life. Can Rogue reproduce normally? While Rogue's powers are concerned with absorbing others' powers and energies, it is established that she can reproduce normally. There have been various comic book storylines wherein Rogue was pregnant, but there is no clarity on how she managed to conceive a child without draining her partner completely. Rogue had dated Gambit for quite a long time before marrying him, and they had difficulty making their relationship work while also working around Rogue's powers and avoiding physical contact. In some instances, they managed to find a way around her powers, but sometimes things went wrong when Gambit doubted their relationship and tried to cure her abilities. During a story arc on Earth 979, Gambit teamed up with Mr. Sinister to cure Rogue's abilities since he was affected by the fact that he couldn't have a physical relationship with her. However, Rogue believed that she'd definitely salvage a physical relationship with Gambit. She even tried to kiss him in order to prove her point. However, she ended up killing him in the process. In a different storyline on a different Earth, Rogue was married to Gambit. She even had 2 children with him, named Oliver and Rebecca. This also raised doubts about her ability to nurse her children without draining them of their energy, but in most cases, children and siblings of characters are immune to these powers. If this was also the case for Rogue, her children were immune to her energy-draining abilities, and she could nurse them and take care of them normally. Gambit and Rogue had another daughter, who later became a mutant and even started calling herself Rogue in honor of her mother.
Got a chance.
X-Men? I don't understand. I just want you to leave me alone!
How can she fight telepathic powers? While Rogue's ability to drain others of their power is her strongest suit, very few fans know that she has the ability to block telepathic attacks. After absorbing Ms. Marvel's powers, Rogue gained a lot of mental strength, making it impossible for her opponents to even attempt to read her thoughts. Various members of the X-Men had even tried to break through her psyche and read her thoughts, but even they had difficulty interpreting her memories and her emotions. One probable reason for this is that she had consumed herself with multiple psyches within her own mind, making it quite difficult for any of her opponents to ever reach her own thoughts. This served as a great defense mechanism for when she went against an opponent with telepathic powers, and it even made it quite difficult for anyone around her to decipher her past.
I'm sure you'll be very happy here. Happy and safe.
Sure.
Conclusion. To sum it all up, Rogue was quite a powerful mutant whose powers helped her stand out amongst other mutants. Her powerful abilities also come, though, with their disadvantages, but Rogue learned to live with them and even defeated countless opponents with their help. We would love for you to leave some comments below on Rogue, and if you like our content, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Do have a good one, and please be safe.
Your powers are mine. Your memories are mine.